Good morning, everyone. I'm here to do another video about my 1900-ish antique toy train layout. Only I thought, based on some questions that I had got from people, that I would get into a little bit more of the detail for pieces that maybe some of you have never seen. So we'll start with track. The track that you're looking at is Lionel 2 7/8 gauge track. So this is from the 1901, 1906, 7 era, and it features these little sort of hook and latch connections, if you will, and they pop together like so, and it's pressed into wooden ties. And the curvature is really predetermined by the two lengths of the inner and outer rail that are different. And then you have straights. Obviously, they did provide connection possibilities with little nuts that were, little bolts that were soldered on, brass. And we have a couple of bridges here. One was made by Joe Mania, one was made by Jim Cohen. These are reproductions. And I basically have two loops on the table of original 2 7/8 track, because my goal when I set out was to have the trains actually run on original track, see what it took to get that to happen, how good it worked, how good it didn't work, how good the trains worked, and so on and so forth. So I'll follow around here. The table's a little bit over 5 by 10 because I already had an existing post-war oriented layout in the room. One unique feature for me and a lot of people is I have an original switch that I was very lucky enough to come across. Those are quite rare, and it works just fine. When I got it, as far as I could tell, it was brand new. Here's some original ties. These are, by the way, the track and the ties are from the later approach to track that Lionel took. 1901, 1902, there was different track. I have never come to possess any of that. The ties were bigger, the rail was different, and so on. So I have that as a mystery. So then, once I get this running, I decided I would have a second loop, and I've had this in a video before. So here's the second loop, and it's not made out of original track for a variety of reasons, derailments being one. I didn't want any derailments up there. So that's just continuous band material, and the ties are homemade by me. So you've seen that in another video. Then I decided to add on a little bit more this past summer, and I now have a loop up here of Carlisle and Finch track, and I believe this is original material. I got it from someone in California who got it from the Hopkins family that had, as those of you that know Carlisle and Finch history, had a very extensive attic-based railway some time ago. So I added that on to get a third level. Just seemed kind of neat to have another level. I have this little trolley here. It's the only Carlisle and Finch piece of rolling stock that I own. To say that the thing runs flawlessly would be an understatement. I'm just amazed at how nicely it runs. It never needs anything except for a rubber band occasionally. It's belt driven. This has got a 3-pole motor, so no hit and miss aspect to it. It's got a reverse unit. I think it's from around 1907, and I have a Carlisle and Finch catalog that I've looked this up in. So it's all original. It's in quite good shape. Like I said, the only thing I did is put a rubber band in a couple times. Decided to add a bridge, and of course that's a Carlisle and Finch spotlight up on top. Saying that tongue-in-cheek, of course. So I've got all of this grossly overpowered by an old pre-war Z transformer. In fact, these pieces run on very little voltage at all, and do so quite easily. So one thing I learned from operating these is just how well made the motors were and the mechanisms, and that they're everything that they were claimed to be. So both companies produce quality products. Alright, so let's actually see if we can get some things running here. So everything on the layout is original. I do own any number of reproduction items that were produced by Jim Cohen, who did incredible work. But right now, for purposes of this little video, everything I've got on here is original. So, let's see. I've got about a 1904 B&O number 5, which I believe in the Lionel catalog is number 100. That came from an old collecting friend in Maine, around the Ellsworth area. Runs very nicely. Then on the inside loop, perhaps my favorite piece is I have a number 300 Lionel trolley, which is Lionel electric running gear and body made by the Converse Toy Company, which is meaningful for me because Converse was about 20 miles from where I am right now. So they were in Winchton, Massachusetts, and around 1898 were perhaps the largest toy company in America, based on an article in the Boston Globe of that time. So we've got those two running. These take very little voltage at all. And then we get the Lionel steel gondola. So that's a number 200. And that comes from, 1904, 1905, based on all of the details. I've had that for over 20 years. Took quite a bit of work to get it running correctly. These pieces are not happy if they're perturbed at all. They run well as they came from the factory, bang them around and things don't do well. Alright, so let's see. The last piece we'll get into the act here is the little Carlisle Finch trolley. And it's operating on, I'll say, 6-7 volts tops. If I ever cranked it up, it would probably achieve the speed of light in almost no time. So let's see. The trolley or the B&O seems to like to slow down on that corner. I only have one lead to each loop, so voltage drops off and all of those connections are probably less than electrically ideal. But as you can see, everything is running well, and it really makes a case for, again, how good of a job that Lionel and also Carlisle and Finch did. So I've added some later lights just because I like lights, not because there was much available in those days. And I still have what would be an oil powered signal here, probably Marklin, but it's actually got little places in it to put oil for lighting, no electricity in that. And then I've got some electric versions of the same, and so someday I'll get those going. The oil, I don't know. Don't want to set the place on fire. So we'll walk around and give you a little bit more of a view. I've got a car that I got recently that's to the correct scale, and some G-scale figures. They're a little bit too colorful, but they're the best I've got at the moment. More lights down here. And I have some Whedon power tools here that I have to hook up an electric motor and counter shaft for and so on, and get those running at some point. So lots of little jobs. Let's see, there's a converse non-powered trolley, but it is on a reproduction chassis, so at some point I can hook that up behind a number 300 and pull it. And I've got a converse livestock car here. Doesn't run on this track in its current form. And this is Jill. She likes trains. She's a 4-year-old English Springer Spaniel. She prefers mostly the standard gauge that's on the floor, but she puts up with this pretty well. So I'm very pleased at the moment. Everything is running around on its own. I'm not having to adjust the voltage. Things aren't flying off the track. Nothing's derailing. And for this stuff, this is about as good as it gets. So we'll give you a different shot here. Somebody mentioned in a response to an earlier video that the steel gondola here looks strange not having a driver for it, and I guess my response would be that obviously Lionel was about a century ahead of things and had an autonomous electric vehicle way before anybody else ever conceived of such. So that would be my explanation for the lack of a driver for that piece right there. So I think we'll stop there, and I hope people have enjoyed this and found it informative and got to see a little bit more of the detail than they had before. And I think for one last thing, I'm going to show you what the powertrain looks like on one of these, so bear with me while I turn it over. Alright, so here's the upside down view of the number 5 B&O. So on the right side you see the drum-based reversing unit. Lionel had a number of approaches to reversing, and this one was by far the best. You see the motor with a cast iron field, meaning that it ran well on DC but didn't like AC. You can see the gearing, and you can see the commutator and brushes. So they had 3 approaches that I know of to brushes, and this was the latest and most successful one. And let's see, the motor really hung from the axles, and you see the embossing of the company in the body here, which identifies it as an original piece. And that's pretty much it. Well made, simple, and obviously lasts forever. So, thank you very much.